Hello, it's Belle Barraway. Welcome to Dazzlius, Learning the Language of Autism, on Chapter 2 of Autism and Routines. I hope you've enjoyed last week's. Thank you for any comments that anybody's left or any messages that people have been reaching out. Really appreciate it. And I thank you all for sharing my videos on social media and Facebook, particularly all the groups that are kind enough to share and allow my videos to be on their groups. I really appreciate it, and I hope that more than anything they're helpful and useful to as many people as possible. That's my intention. So this week I'm going to talk about stims, tics, and why they can be important within a routine, and what they kind of offer and what they give, and what I've learned through our son, that very thing. And they're quite important and they're amazing. So when I talk about stims and tics, there are endless number of variants of stims and tics. But the kind of stims and tics that George does are, there's visual stims, there's physical stims, there's vocal stims, there's auditory stims, and probably many others that I don't even know are there. And I spend a lot of time watching my son and trying to learn as much as I can, and I know that I miss loads of stuff as well. So visual stims can be things like blinking, closing his eyes, pulling faces with his eyes, making his eyes do different shapes. He may look at one object over and over and over and over again. He may bring it close to his face and move it away, move it away, that kind of thing. And many others. Physical stims are all those things, plus he moves his body. He may jump, or he may do lots of hands things. Sometimes he bangs himself on certain parts of his body. Sometimes he bangs cupboards, doors, just makes like a sound like that. Sometimes he lays on the floor. Sometimes he'll sort of throw himself on the floor really gently. Sometimes he just hops from one side to the other. Sometimes he stands still like a statue. Sometimes he does vocal stims, where he'll just make a sound, oh, or other sounds. That's the only example I'm going to give you. An auditory stims, where he will need to hear the same sound over and over again. And when these, and also the physical, the visual, the vocal and the auditory, they can all interlink and all be like nourishing and helpful and comforting and anchoring and necessary, is my point today, within a routine. And often if someone comes along, a neurotypical person normally will come along and think, I don't want you to do that for whatever reason. I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's and it's annoying me. I don't understand it. It doesn't look like you're concentrating. Just a few examples. I mean, obviously, if they are unsafe, as in they are going to hurt that autistic person, or they are clearly hurting, like cutting them or causing them that. I mean, George bangs his body, but it doesn't hurt him. He doesn't whack himself in the face or anything. He just very gently bangs himself. So I don't ask him not to do that, because it's not causing him any harm. But if it was, then that's a different situation altogether. So just wanted to be clear on that. And what I've learned is that if you stop a stim in any situation, but I'm talking about routines today, then you stop the flow. The stims are there for a reason. some of which I've learned and understand, and some of which I don't, but I still accept. But what I have learned is that they seem to create a flow, a nice flow of movement and continuation. So, like a lovely, beautiful melody that just la 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 flows along really, really nicely. And by taking any of those away, you will create a space. And often that autistic person will then need to go right back to the beginning because you've interrupted the flow of that routine. And the stims that have been created within that routine are what keeps that package nice and flowy and just feels good for that person. So don't stop the tics and stims is my advice. Because many autistic people, and I'm not talking about every single autistic person on the planet in any examples that I give at all, this is just primarily from our son's experience and from what other people have told me, but certainly not everybody. Every autistic person is different. But many autistic people can do more than one thing at a time really well because they've kind of been born having to do that. Like they're born into this crazy, noisy, overwhelming world. And so from the get-go, even if it's taken a neurotypical person a while to recognize it, they are having to deal with loads of sensory stimuli as well as dealing with what somebody wants them to concentrate on. So they're kind of used to it and they're really good at it. And it's a skill that a lot of neurotypical people lack, which is why I think a lot of neurotypical people can't understand how someone looks like they're doing one thing but they're standing there doing this while they're reading, or they're doing this while you're talking to them, or going and you think, why are you listening to me? And it's like, they are and they're listening to you better because they're making that sound. So these tics and stims are often the reason why routines and activities work, because it's the stims and the tics that are the coping strategies for many, many reasons. So they have a part to play within a routine. And what I've learnt with George is that if he's doing a routine, say for example, having tea, eating food, that's a 2-hour ritual, 2-hour routine. It's a long routine. And he has, within that routine, he will move around and he will do stimming and sound, all the stims that I've already mentioned. He does an array of all of them. And some of those stims and tics are only used when he's using his food routine. And then for another routine, he's got another set of stims. So that's what I'm saying, that they're part of the package of the routines. They become part of the routine. They become routine-like stims that play a very important role. They're anchor points. I call them anchor points. So they keep George feeling focused and in that place. Everything makes sense when he... And I think a lot of his stims and tics are like it's like he's absorbing the sensory input of, say, food. So the tastes, the smells, the sounds, the sensations, the joy, the pleasure, of what food brings and what food can bring to all of us. He is expressing that through his body in every way he can. And that is a manifestation of what is going on within him from a sensory perspective and an emotional perspective. It's amazing. So they're really, really important. And I just say it's a language within itself. So be patient with your autistic child and person in your life, and just enjoy watching and learning about this amazing way of being, because it is like I've said in my other video, beautiful, I think. I really, really do. I absolutely love watching George do his lovely routines, and the importance of a routine, of starting it to finishing it, and all these things that he creates through these stims, and the pattern of how he has to do things and why he needs things done in a certain order. Is what helps him know what is the beginning, the middle and the end. There needs to be an end. And often I've heard, just as a side note, from a lot of autistic people, actually, a lot of autistic people who, you know, live independently and, you know, just are, you know, grown adults living independently. It's, you know, what I've learned is some that do live independently, even within their own homes, will often create visual boards and things, and like cues and reminders to, one guy said to me that when he knows it's time to go to bed, he's tired and he knows he needs to go to bed, just say the TV's on, and he knows he needs to turn the TV off to go to bed, and that's what he wants to do. But finding that to actually switch it off and then have that space between no television and then getting into bed, that bit of space is what causes a lot of anxiety, and sometimes he can get stuck in not being able to switch the TV off even though he wants to. So, you know, and that's like, wow. Sometimes he could be there for a couple of hours thinking, I really need to go to bed, I really need to go to bed, but I've got to like turn the TV off and then get to bed. So I think that what George has done, he has created an action, an activity that will keep him flowing till the next one, rather than nothing. There's never nothing anyway, but I think autistic people are very good at knowing that. So just creating something, and that's just an example of that. So on that side note, routines that can seem very stringent and strict and cannot do without them. What I've learned as well, which was really useful for me to know and learn, is that sometimes I can see that George wants to do something else, but he's created a routine for himself. Like, for example, watching the TV. He has a certain amount of time when he comes home from school and he needs some processing downtime, and he'll just sort of snuggle up under a blanket and he'll watch a bit of TV. Well, now he's older, I can see that he wants to get up and do other things. And when I offer it to him, it's like I can see he goes to get up and then he's like, I can't. It's almost like he's gotten stuck within his own routine. Even though he wants to desperately try something else, he's within this routine, a bit like the guy with the TV. It's like, I know I want to go to bed, but I'm now stuck here. And that was really groundbreaking for me, because there are some routines that George does want to stay in, thank you very much, and he wants to do them and he'll keep doing them, thank you, that's fine. But there are others that I can see he's ready to come out of, but he doesn't know how. So that's something for you to know, that sometimes it's not always their own choice, even though they've made that routine themselves. So it takes patience and reassurance and a lot of time to help them move from that routine into another one if they want to. So I've talked about some examples of stims and routines. And I wanted to just try and give another example of another type of routine. And I'm just looking around now to see, like a toileting routine. Let me talk about a toileting routine. So there's two different types. So if George needs a wee, he naturally needs a wee, he'll go to the loo and have a wee. But within going to the loo, there's a routine for that. And it's very set out. And he'll take his blanket with him, and he'll touch a couple of things in the bathroom, whether he's at home, whether he's at school. The light always has to go on, whether it's dark or not. The light goes on, and he has to often put his fingers here to close some outside stimuli. So when he's having a wee, that's what he does. That's been interesting as a boy, weeing with your eyes closed and your fingers in your ears. That's taken some negotiating, but it's part of the routine. So there's some stims going on that he needs to do that. He does a lot of that, and then he has his wee, and then obviously he flushes the toilet. He has to wait for the flush to stop completely before he'll move on to washing his hands. Then he washes his hands by turning on the taps in a certain way, using the soap in a certain way, putting the soap back where it needs to be, then rinsing, switching off, and then wiping his hands, and the towel has to go back exactly where it was. Light goes off, then he's happy. That's a basic toilet routine. He's changed that because he used to need me there. But he has naturally over the years changed that, where he'll go off to the loo on his own and he doesn't need me there. And he washes his hands and all of that, and it's brilliant. There's also a wee routine that he's created within other routines. I hope you can follow this. So he'll be doing food, and now he's decided that as part of his food routine, somewhere in there, he needs to go for a wee. I'm not sure why, because often he doesn't wee. It's not because he needs a wee. He knows when he does, but this is an extra routine part, and now it's become something that he does all the time. And the same with number twos, it's the same with wees. It's another routine within a routine that he has created. And it's, and I've said to him, oh, you don't need to wee. Why are you weeing? I've done that, been there, done all of that. And he just kind of looks at me and it's like, you're not getting it, mother. But he just needs to do that. And because he's started it now, it's something that he always does. So I know that between eating tea, he will go off to the loo once when he doesn't wee, but he goes through the processes of weeing. So that's just an example of a routine within a routine. And because he started it, now he needs to continue doing that all the time. There's so much to routines. There's so much to, finding out the reasons to why things are done. It's amazing. I love it. So I hope that's helpful. And next week, I'm going to talk about a couple more examples of routine and types of routine, and anything else that anybody else seems to mention or comment that wants me to mention on here or share, then I will gladly. So that'll be week 3, and next week might be the last week of routines. Also, I'm going to talk about helping with routines, as in creating routines, and like talking about social boards and picture boards and things like that, and cues, lots of cues and social cues and things like that. I'm going to talk about that as our last week of routines. Okay, well, thank you for watching, and please do subscribe, following the links below and clicking onto any of the other videos that you may find useful. And after the routines, I'm going to be doing a series on senses, just pure senses, not to do with anything else, but just talking about senses, because I've become aware that I talk about sensory stuff a lot, and I've spoken about sensory stuff within food, within play, but I just want to talk about the senses as senses. Okay, well, have a lovely week, and thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, and see you soon. Bye for now.